guys. Everybody hear us okay? Welcome. I'm going to go ahead and pray for us to get us started, and then we'll start with some introductions and get right into it. So if you would bow your heads with me. Jesus, thank you for this day, for this gathering of believers. Lord, thank you that we're all here to encourage and lift up one another in the admonition of you. And as we walk through this life, Lord, and through the different seasons, Lord, I ask that you would be with us, show us your way, show us your path. Lord, I ask that you would bless this time and bless our fellowship. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So, my name's Jeremy. Hi. Hello. How's it going? I like to keep things a little bit more relaxed, and so most of the time I act goofy. That is just a part of who I am. So, would like to just start by saying hello and welcome. Hi. Hope the food is delicious. Thank you for those who have brought that to us. It's a lot better to do something like this when you're not hangry, and so I'm really thankful for that. I would like to start and give a chance for David and Quinn. I guess should I call you John or Quinn?
No, Quinn is good.
Quinn is good. Okay, I'm confused now. But we're going to give them a second to just kind of introduce themselves. They're both tenured in campus ministry and have been doing that for longer than I have. And we're excited for that. And I just want them to have a second to kind of introduce themselves and talk about their families and their sense of call and kind of what they do, so we can get to know them a little bit better. So, okay.
Hello, my name is David Hardy. I serve with Crew. Member here at Hartland, so my family and I, we've been at Hartland for the past 5 years. I've been on staff with Crew about 10 years, a little over 10 years. We got 4 kids. Roosevelt's here this morning. Most of you probably know my wife Katie, who works here as the children's ministry coordinator, and then we've got Violet, George, and Richard. So yeah, my sense of call is that I want to help college students know Jesus. That's why I joined staff with Crew 10 years ago, and I didn't know how to do that, and I've learned a little bit about how to do that over the last 10 years, hopefully. So my role right now is the team leader for Central Kansas, which includes Wichita State here in town, but also Kansas State and a few other campuses around Central Kansas that we're active on right now. Butler Community College, Hutchinson, Fort Hays State. And we've got about 20 more campuses in Central Kansas that we'd like to see God start Crew movements on. So, yeah, we'll stop there. Keep going.
My name is Quinn Sloan. Maybe you just heard me for a long time. You're like, I'm tired of hearing this guy speak. Just a little more, I'm sorry. Let's see, I talk a little bit. My wife, Emily, and I moved to Lawrence, Kansas about a year ago after I graduated seminary in Southern California. And we've started an RUF work at the University of Kansas. When I was in college, maybe the most important Christian in my life was a pastor of a local church who, when I went to college, like a lot of students do, I wanted to explore the freedom of being away from my parents, so I grew up in a Christian home, but I, felt like sleeping in some days at church and hanging with the wrong crowd or whatever that looks like. And this guy was just like, his name was Tim. It was incredible that Tim really loved me and cared for me. We would go, do all the fun things. We'd play basketball and watch movies and have lunch. And he'd say, man, how's your prayer life? What is the Lord teaching you? And he felt the relationship to challenge me. I was so edified by that relationship, by Tim. And I thought, I'd love to serve in that role as a guy on campus, who just loves Jesus, wants to see non-Christians come to Christ, wants to see, covenant children walking with the Lord. Not like that's, my doing, obviously, or any of our doings, but it's just a real love of mine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, guys. So the goal, if we can encapsulate that, is what we're trying to do, and why we've called all of us together is to do just that, like what Tim did, to encourage you as you go into this with some ideas of how to progress and how to go forward. And so I'd like to pose a question to both of you guys and give you a chance to kind of speak into that.
what encouragement would you offer the students, the parents, as they go into these next seasons, as they look into the years to come, on how they can support their children and also support each other, maybe for the first time?
Okay, I'll start. Encouragement that I would offer. Well, I would just say college can be a wild ride in a lot of ways. I mean, there's lots of ups and downs that students are facing for the first time, and so I think what college students need from their parents is just encouragement, support, prayer for them, and so trusting that God is in control even when it seems like He's not, or you don't understand what's going on in your child's life even, but trusting that God has them where He wants them and is working in their life. And advice I would give, I mean, it's pretty simple, but I would say pray for your children. Hopefully that's not new advice for any of you as parents, but particularly, as they're facing college and some new things for the first time, just pray for them. Pray that God would provide what they need as college students.
Totally agree. If I could add something of an encouragement, maybe this will surprise you. I think the answer to the question, how to keep your faith in college, is actually really similar to how to keep your faith at any stage in life. How to keep your faith when you move to a new town. How to keep your faith after you have your third kid and you're really tired on Sunday mornings. So I mean, be encouraged. This is not, I don't know, I'm just, frankly, being on campus for a while, I'm not as afraid of that, as opposed to other times in your life. I don't know, it's not like the big boogeyman in my mind. Like, there really are people who love your students, who are praying for your students, people who want to see your students know Jesus. I guess my encouragement is you've gone through this, and maybe you're going through this a lot. Pray for them regularly. That's all I got, man. David, good answer.
Yeah, that's great, guys. So as we think about these times, I remember going into college and getting moved into the dorms, getting my books and stuff picked up, and getting ready, and figuring out who my roommates and things were. And there's probably some things that I would go back and maybe do differently. What are maybe 2 or 3 things that you would suggest, like somebody going into, like maybe the seniors or juniors that are here, that's pretty close for them? What are 2 or 3 things that are kind of the non-negotiables? Like after you get settled, these are the things that I would suggest to maybe make important things to do in the next 24 hours.
Sure, let's see. The number one thing for me that I would say is find a church. I don't know about the next 24 hours, but over the next semester, next 2 months, find a church, actually get plugged in. I don't mean to do like a sort of scared straight seminar, but Lifeway did a study in 2017 of people who self-report that they once were Christians and now they're not. The number one answer to the question, why did you leave the church, was, I just didn't find another church wherever I moved. A lot of them were college students, and 70% of that answer, I just didn't find a church, said that it wasn't even intentional. They just never got around to it. So number one priority over the next 2 months, next semester, however long you give yourself, find a church, really get plugged in there, worship. At some point, maybe serve, do something like in your gifts. If it's children's ministry, if it's doing high school ministry, you just graduate high school presumably, right? Get plugged in to the local church, the body of believers. I just think it's there you're going to be fed, nourished, encouraged. You're going to be with God's people who are different ages than you and from different backgrounds. It's really sweet. Maybe number 2, so that goes for, even if you go to a little tiny Christian school, and you're like, I got chapel, I'm good. No, I would say absolutely not. Get plugged into a church on Sunday morning. Number 2 would be, and this does take more time too, but find your people on campus. If you're at a big state school, like RUF or Wichita State, I'd love for you to find, or I said RUF at KU or Wichita State, I'd love for you to find a Christian group. I would even say, whenever you find that Christian group, actually join that Christian group. Don't kind of window shop. Well, I go to Crew because I love the food. I go to Navs because they, whatever. Get locked into one, because I think there you're gonna that's where you'll feel the freedom to be open and share your prayer requests and struggles and be encouraged by brothers and sisters and people in your same demographic. I suppose those are my two encouragements for the first semester. Sorry to steer your question away, Jeremy. Find a church. Find a group of Christians.
Yeah, I mean, my answer would be largely the same. I think for similar reasons that Quinn's saying, I would say isolation is the biggest threat to college students keeping their faith. I think we tend to think about maybe professors with a different worldview or friends with a different upbringing or something as a threat. And not that that's not real, but I would say the number one threat to college students is isolation. And so, the church is the best place to not be isolated. But along with that, a community of friends that know you well and that you're willing to let know you, to know other people and be known by other people. And so, that's not, like Quinn said, that's not going to happen in the first 24 hours, but begin to be looking for that. I mean, another way you could put that is to love God and love people as a college student. That's what we're called to do in all stages of life, like Quinn was saying, but particularly as a college student, that's difficult because isolation is a threat. And part of the reason that isolation is such a big threat is because you're making multiple transitions, big life transitions, really quickly, both into college and out of college, which is probably the only time in life where you're going to make two, especially if you're moving away, that can look different, obviously, but if you're staying in town. But like Quinn was saying, that research about people leaving the church, it's mostly when people move and just don't find a new church. And so those key transition periods, whether that's that first day of college or that first semester, but then even on the other side, as you leave college, I know most of you guys are thinking about going to college at this point, but even thinking about leaving college, even if you're, I've seen students that were fully involved with church, campus ministry, gung-ho about everything we're doing, and then didn't transition well after college. And so both of those transition periods are really important.
Thanks, guys. I think thinking about all of those things together, any point where we experience a lot of change is a big thing. And changes take growth, and growth is hard. And if we try to grow on our own, apart from the vine, we're gonna have a hard time. So thank you for those encouragements. And speaking of growth, what are some things, maybe a personal story or something like that, where you've seen somebody come in, experience the transition? I know for me going in, there were a few times I was like, oh, this is the real world now. When I went into college, and it kind of surprised me in a lot of ways, and that was a good thing for me. I grew through that. But maybe if you could speak into the encouraging side of it, to go, wow, this student had it hard, or this is a person that I just saw the Lord work in an amazing way. Maybe something along those lines. Doesn't have to be earth-shattering, but something that you were encouraged, a win or fruit that you've seen through campus ministry.
Yeah, I think I would just share a story of a student this year that got to know the first week of school back in the fall through just a tabling thing on campus, and we started meeting up and we started reading the Gospel of John together. And he had, he grew up in the Catholic Church, but he'd never really read the Bible before. He was familiar with the things he grew up with, but every week we sit down and read a chapter of John or a part of a chapter of John, and he's just like amazed by who Jesus is, what Jesus is doing, how the people respond to Jesus. And so for what's exciting to me, whether it's students like him or students that know all the theology, doctrine, answers coming in and know their Bible really well, but a lot of times it's their first time outside of their parents or their home community, that they're actually engaging with Scripture for the first time, and maybe slowing down and actually thinking about how it applies to them as a college student. So that's what's encouraging to me and exciting to me, just getting to see students open up their Bible and read it and really start to engage it on maybe a deeper level than they had before.
I love that story. Two really quick ones. One, frankly, as far as I'm aware, that he's not a Christian, but I like to play basketball with students. I'm playing in the gym, and I'm sitting down with a student from India, and we're just chatting in between games, so not very long. I mean, this is like the first or second time I've ever seen this guy. I say, hey, like, how are you? How's the semester going? And he just, man, to be honest, I'm still grieving the loss of my father. This guy was on the phone with his dad from India, and his dad had a heart attack on the phone with his son. That was the last time his dad ever spoke. I share that, and he and I then, like, incredibly have met a few times after, and I got to tell him about hope and, like, you know, mourning and evil. Even though he's not a Christian, I do think there is actually an incredible openness among students at college. Students are really looking for something. And when their Philosophy 101 class may not give them the answers they're hoping for, they're going to keep looking. They're looking for truth and looking for encouragement and hope. So yeah, I don't know, just like students really are looking, even if they don't know Jesus, I think they are looking. And then two, maybe more traditional way that the Lord's worked through somebody is, I met with this guy week one, same thing, tabling. He's a covenant child at a Presbyterian church in Michigan, but he told me I don't want anything to do with it. I don't care, you know, and you know, I just, he's a freshman. I'm by myself. There's a new ministry, so I just real quickly like followed him on Instagram, and I mean, it's just full of like nonsense. You know, him doing things he shouldn't, publicly filming it all. I'm like, bro, first of all, just as a buddy, like you can't be doing this. Second of all, like as a pastor, I want to encourage you otherwise. But and just over the semester, we met every week. Now we're meeting twice a week. He just like can't get enough. It's nothing I'm doing. The Lord is just like working in this guy's heart. He's like, I get, you know, what it means to be forgiven, and I'm actually looking like I want to learn more about my identity, and it's not in whatever it was in, it's in Jesus. That's been so sweet.
That's fantastic, guys. Thank you. You know, I think we can often forget this water that we swim in, the grace that we have, and you know, getting into a college setting, leaving and moving away, and entering into a time when we see that maybe just fade away or slip away behind us, and forget the joy that brought us. And so there's just some good that can come out of those times in college where it's like you maybe understand the absence of it and where it goes. But the good news is that we're never alone, or that we're never by ourselves, and thankfully we belong to God. And that's a huge thing to remember in and of itself. And also to remember, like we said earlier, that it's important to remember you're part of the covenant community, and that covenant community is not let you go either. So to build on that, how can we as a church, and we'll open it up to your guys' questions, how can we as a church in a college town with WSU here, and as a sending church of these students as they go out, how can we support the college itself and those students there, and the children as they go out?
I've not been on campus long enough, honestly, to answer how can you support your students when you send them. I'd like to hear David maybe talk more about that. I don't feel like I'm in a position, but as a church in a college town, I don't know how many visitors you get from Wichita State or Butler or other colleges in the area. I would just encourage you, though, if you see a college student maybe you don't recognize, like, I don't know, buy them lunch, really. If you feel like students love free lunch, or I mean, get to know them, like, you know, show them, like, hey, people here really do care about you. You know, meet them while they're here, you know, on a Sunday. I suppose that's not really that detailed of an answer. Like, you know, care about what they care about, you know, if they're in a club or something, I don't know. Yeah, just students, when they come visit, it's really easy for a student, especially someone who is questioning Christianity, to just slip in and slip out. Make that your goal, that is impossible. And that's actually a good thing. Make it your goal that they are going to meet you and you're going to remember their names. And when they come back, if they do, you're going to greet them again. I don't know, I think that goes a long way for students. And free meals too, always. Yeah,
Yeah, I was going to add that about free meals. So
Yeah.
College students love food.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I would add to that is just don't be afraid of kind of entering into that transitory period that college students are in. Even if they're only here for another year or a semester, or you know they're going to move on or whatever, invest in relationship with them. Particularly I'm thinking about if we're ministering to college students here. And then, as you send students out, I mean, I'd say one way we could equip, whether it's our children or students here at the church, is just helping them understand what to look for in a healthy church. Obviously, you know, theology and doctrine matter, and we want to help them be in a place that has good theology and good doctrine. But the community aspect is really important, and you want to help them find a church, particularly we're talking about that isolation and transition difficulty where they will be known. And so help them connect, and maybe even some grace for going to a church that has slightly different theology, but a healthy community that they can get involved in. And that's where I would start there.
Perfect.
Great advice. Thank you guys, and thank God for giving that to you. At this point, we'd like to open it up for questions that you guys have. I've got a couple on the deck in case anybody has questions, but usually we'll have some questions. So we'll go ahead and open it up at this time. If you just want to throw a hand up and ask, and we will go from there. So, thank you, Jonathan.
Okay, I'll warm us up. It's a two-part question. One part is, let's say that a parent is feeling nervous about sending their child to a state school. How would you respond to that? And then secondly, why is sending your child to a Christian school not enough to ensure that they're going to keep the faith? You understand both parts?
Yeah.
Okay.
To the first part, if you're nervous about the state school aspect, I went to a state school and had a good experience. I mean, that's where I grew up going to Christian schools, and I'd say I really came to know Jesus, at least in a more significant way, as a college student at a state school, and I think that's actually pretty common from people I know. So that's just anecdotal from my experience. The state school, there were people there, there's KU actually, where Quinn's at now, and people from Grace and other ministries, like Crew, that welcomed me and provided meals, a lot of meals, and I showed up to stuff, and they helped me see why the gospel was important to me as a college student. And so I'd say most state schools, that's where all the ministries go to, are the big state schools. So probably the big state schools are going to have lots of people, whether it's Crew, RUF, Navigators, plenty of other ministries as well, and then a lot of good churches too. So there's a lot of options at most state schools of communities to get connected. And then to the other part, the Christian school, obviously not all Christian schools are the same, and so it might depend on what school we're talking about here. Not all state schools are the same either. Just goes back to that community and isolation piece, I think, are so important for college students, keeping the faith. And maybe they're not going to find the same type of community at a Christian school that they might find at a state school, or maybe they will. But what would you have?
I think that's great. Another thing about, so my kids going to a Christian school, why can I not just be sure they're going to keep the faith, or something along those lines, Jonathan? This may be the first time that your student, to parents, is interacting with things that maybe you haven't curated for them. And even at the most conservative Christian schools in America, I don't know, Grove City's pretty intense, right? Wherever that is, and these are great, but they may be reading philosophers or hearing things from students who are asking questions, and maybe they're I've never really thought about that on my own. I think that can actually be, paradoxically, a good thing. I think that's where some students will hear, I really made my faith my own. When I was asking these questions, the Lord can really work on that, and sort of, it's no longer your parents' faith, but it's your faith, to students. I don't know. There's a lot of students asking questions. I think at both schools, I've really found that people are truly looking for truth. At a Christian school, I went to Wheaton College, a little small school in Chicagoland, and at KU, people are really asking questions about truth, and people are actually open. To students, real quickly, whether you're going to a big state school or a little Christian school, don't shy away from these questions. Don't try to suppress them. You can really ask them, because there really is truth. There really is an answer. Maybe you're wrestling with what's up with the evil in the world, or whatever it is. These are real questions that people really wrestle with, and the Bible can really give you encouragement and answers. Good question, Jonathan. That's my answer.
Yeah. All right. Who else? Yes, Micah.
So when trying to find a church, do you think that it's more important that we find one that has a good community or a good doctrine? Because I don't know whether, like, if I'm more connected and I feel better with one church, but they disagree with me on points on the Christian faith, but there's this other church that I don't feel as connected to, but they agree with my beliefs more, which one is better to go with?
It's a great question. So restate it just for the sake of everybody in case they couldn't hear, but if we put it down to one sentence, it would be, what is more important, to go to a school that, or a church that has good doctrine that I agree with 100%, or a school that has, a church that has good community that I feel really connected with personally?
I'll answer since I kind of brought that up a little bit. I mean, I'd say, first of all, hopefully that's a false dichotomy, right? We want to find churches that are confessional and missional and welcoming, and so, yeah, I mean, hopefully I would hope that you don't end up in a difficult choice like that. But, yeah, I mean, I think there's no perfect church either, and so you probably aren't going to find a church where you agree on every point of doctrine, especially when you're talking about secondary, tertiary matters. And so I would say it's important to find a church that you agree on the big things, and it's important to find a church where you can find a good community and be really connected, and try not to fall into the false dichotomy, is what I'd say.
Not really. Lay down your non-negotiables, Micah. These are the things I have to see at a church, theologically, and then from there, get plugged in. Yeah, it's a great question. I agree, David, too.
It's a really good question.
Yeah, one that a lot of people are going to ask, so thank you, Micah. Anybody else? Yes, Brad.
Yeah, this is from our angle as a church. If we know that there are students who are either Christians and wanting to connect as well, and we are sitting here in our place, how do you build bridges so that can actually happen?
Okay, so I'll restate the question just for the sake of everybody to hear. But as we encounter or have possible connections with students that are nearby, how do we build bridges with them? Food was brought up, but what are maybe some other ways we can bring them into relationship and connection? Is that kind of where we're going, Brad?
Yeah, actually, prior to the thing of what we do when they arrive, how do you get from A to B?
Okay, so how would the connection itself be made, possibly? Okay.
First thing I would say is, like Jeremy mentioned, foods. I would just say be practicing hospitality, and if you're talking prior to them coming, just be valuing that as a community of welcoming in new people and being hospitable. And I think for college students specifically, ones that are from out of town, that are disconnected from their family, being welcomed into a home for dinner and connecting over a meal is a great way to get to know them and help them feel welcome and cared for.
That's a great question. David, you may disagree with this. I have found in my brief time on campus that students are a little wary of non-students who are just around a little bit. I'm thinking of the guy who means really well. He's doing great things. Who comes with a big table that says repent and believe, and he's there 2 hours a week, and you don't ever see him anywhere else. Students are wary. They're not really interested in hearing from that guy. So my answer to you would not be spend the little free time you have on campus. I think there are people on campuses like David and other, crew people and NAPS people who are there, maybe more, and are more connected to students. I think a great way is offer rides. Get a ride to Hartland. I think. I don't know, man. That's a really good question. Hospitality is a great answer. I would say. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe how else can you connect with students other than in their 3-minute walkways in between class? Is it are they working at spots around town that you like to frequent, at restaurants or at gyms? Are you guys going to the same gyms? Like, that is a great touch point. I think students are a little wary of somebody trying to grab them. Hey, get your headphones out while you're walking to class. Let me talk to you for 3 minutes about a really sweet church. Even though it's awesome, I love Hartland Church. Where else can you meet them? yeah, how can, if they're looking, and they will, how can you get them to Hartland? Is there a ride service, something like that? Because that's a great touch point. Yeah. What do you disagree with that, David, or?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That I mean, maybe a bigger thing is I think what students need are what I would call thick relationships, and that they experience a lot of thin relationships, and that leads to that isolation. And so, what Quinn's talking about would be an example of a really thin relationship is just talking to someone for 2 minutes and then trying to get them to come to something.
Well, meeting one.
Yeah. And so looking for ways to develop thicker relationships with college students.
Yeah, that's almost an evangelism question, right? A theory of how do we make a meaningful connection with somebody and encourage them to come and be a part of this. And so I'm glad it was definitely asked. It makes me wonder too if part of our own presence in those places is a similar answer to the way that we should be acting toward anyone around us as we are either in our job or occupation, or whether we are on campus and involved in a club or something like that there. Maybe that's one of those places we can develop a thicker relationship that would be one that would have the relational capital and the friendship level to be able to invite them to come and be a part of a church, whether they were a part of that before they were in college or after. So, great stuff. What other questions? Yes, Gary.
I'm going to speak to that, to what you're talking about. This happened some years ago when my kids were college age and high school. If you're connected to a couple of students who are really kind of leaders and or believers, and they're trying to reach out to the community, how we can help. And what we ended up doing was randomly, sometimes after church, hey, we got a lot of soup at the Ginch house. And so I'm particularly speaking to Christine's friends. And some of them are here now, maybe. And they would be, they'd come over, and it was always guys wanted to be around the table with me because I was teaching theology, and that was an interest. The women, they're all in the living room, and they're all talking about whatever they're talking about, but it created two things: a venue for me, my wife, and other guys my age who would come over to be part of that. Like some of them were the other parents of their kids. It created a great environment where you're connecting to the church a little bit, but you're also with your friends, and you're having this moment. And we didn't do it every Sunday. We just did it a number of times. But I got a son-in-law out of the deal, and it was. And there were several marriages that came from being at the Ginch's house. Not bragging, just saying it happened because they're that age, you know. And some of them weren't even in college, but they were. Some of them were, and it's something now we could be thinking just to do ourselves to help tie into the church a little bit too. So that's just a suggestion. But I think you could ask Christine if it was helpful. And
Okay, we saw another hand go up back there too. Thank you, Gary. I'll let you guys kind of speak into that. I mean, maybe have you guys seen that happen? Do you have couples or anybody that at KU that maybe did that for you while you were at school? Or I remember I was at K-State, and I was one of those students who was a little more wary of those kind of things. Like somebody was offering food, I was like, I don't know if I really want to go. But now I'm thinking, looking back, those are probably things where I could have met people like the Ginches who really cared a lot about people and could have been poured into. So do you guys have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add. I mean, I would say that's a great example of developing a thick relationship with college students and providing that space for them to be known. And yeah, if you can provide food, that's always a win. So.
Nothing to add, that's great.
Yeah, okay, great. Other questions? All right.
Yeah, I'll ask another one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm going to school. It's my freshman year. I'm on campus. I've heard you say I should find a church, but all my friends are part of other stuff. Like they're part of different sorority, whatever, fraternity, whatever it is. How do you encourage them? Because again, like on Sunday morning, all my friends are going down to IHOP. And you're telling me to go to church. Why? Like, how do you encourage me right now? This is the dilemma I'm facing. All right?
Okay, great question.
I suppose. Yeah, it's a good question. When I was in college, I worked at a nice-ish restaurant. You know, the chef there once worked with the guy who worked with the guy with a Michelin star. So just legacy, you know, it's a decent-ish restaurant. And one of these places where the kitchen's open from 11 to 2, and then closed from 2 to 4 for full cleanup, full house, you know, reset, and then open again from 4 to 9 or whatever. My favorite part of every shift was family lunch, family meal, where from 2 to 4 they would throw together whatever scraps they have of like high quality, you know, foods that either weren't served at lunch or, you know, stuff that they can't portion for dinner, and we would sit around and eat. And these are guys that, I mean, from totally different walks of life than me, different, you know, it's like some serious characters in the back of a restaurant. But the idea that even though these aren't, you know, these people aren't in my same time, my phase of life, or, you know, like maybe the same background, sometimes we didn't even speak the same language. I picked up a little Spanish in the back of a restaurant, you know, like it actually was conversational at one point. But anyways, I've lost most of it. That's not the point. The point is, church seems, maybe church seems kind of weird. Like, yeah, these people don't, like, my buddies are going to IHOP. These people aren't my same age. You know, they're not in the same class with me. Like, my friends are doing something else. I would just say, yeah, the church is where you're fed. You know, maybe not the most helpful analogy, but you know, the family meal, like the church is where you're fed. And it's where, you know, these people in the church, these are actually your family, and maybe your friends who don't follow the Lord. You may like get along like gangbusters, but you're not, you know, like that's not your family. And I don't know, Jonathan, I would pray for you, man. If you're an 18-year-old guy who doesn't feel like going to church, I can't drag you there. I'm going to express to you the need and the great value and the way the Lord works through the preached word, and you know the way that these people who are older than you and aren't in class with you, but the way they love you and they care for you, I'd be praying for you. That's my answer.
Yeah, that's a good story too. A good picture of that. I mean, I think just helping them understand that they need multiple types of relationships. And so, I mean, they're friends. Like maybe maybe those are non-believers, or maybe they're a student that's involved in a campus ministry, and they think that kind of satisfies the spiritual community that I need, and so I can just hang out with those friends all the time. But what they would be missing out on is getting to know people that are older than them, people in different stages of life, and also serving. I mean, the church needs them to be there to help, and they have unique gifts that they can bring as college students to the church. And so, yeah, just helping, or try to help you see that you need the church and the church needs you, and like you're saying, that's where we get fed, and you can't live on pancakes alone, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. Neil was not made to be sustained on pancakes alone. You know, one little thing I would add to that, I think, you know, I've got one question in the back. One thing I'm going to add real quick is just that, you know, as I look back over my experience as well and think about, there were about 3 different groups that I spent a lot of time with, and the one that I wish I would have spent more time with was definitely my church family. You know, I think that was a time, like Hosea 2 says, where he will slay Israel with thirst. I was slayed with thirst in that time of being without anything to drink in the desert. And ultimately that led me to the Lord in a deeper way. But if I think my growth in him would have been so much better to have been in that those relationships I poured so much time into outside of any faith community got a lot of my attention and a lot of my late night hours, but they did not necessarily tend into any real benefit long term. So, Ms. Heidi, would you have a question?
Here's just a comment based on that.
Yeah,
Our
please.
daughter's at the University of Tulsa, and she's got really involved with her church. And one of the things I think they've done is great, but she's also had to contribute. They have kids singing in worship, they have kids, she's been a leader in a small group, they get them involved with the families, and so it's not just, oh, if I want to go, it's, they feel an obligation that empowers them to be a part of this, so.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. Yeah, get involved and be a server there. Do something that you're gifted with. Absolutely. Other questions that we have? Yes, ma'am.
So, we're talking the negative side of college. So, how do we encourage kids who make mistakes, who fall away, who are succumbed by the false faiths? Because I hear a lot of encouraging. But the opposite is very much there, you know. And you can be swallowed up by it. So how do you help those kids? How do we, I guess as parents, connect with the ministry, ultimately connect with it? You know, because sometimes from the families that they don't want to hear any more from us. So, you know, I really handle those situations. How do you encourage these young people who are going to college? You know, one thing I'd like to hear more about is how do we, yes, get involved. But what if you screw up? Then what?
Yeah, well,
Can I repeat the question?
Oh, yeah.
do you, I can, okay, you can repeat it.
So Nicole, I'm going to do my best to restate it for everybody, but I think the heart of the question is if you maybe are a student and someday you feel like you've possibly fallen away, or if you are a parent of a student who is not keeping their faith as diligently as we would hope they would, what would be the advice for the parents? What would be the encouragement for the students? What would our gospel truth and hope be?
Well, yeah, the first thing I would want to say is just thank you for sharing that story, and that it sounds very difficult. And you know, for me as a parent, my kids are all younger, and so I have not walked through that as a parent. But I have seen other people walk through it, like you're talking about. It's not uncommon. It does happen that students do walk away. I think you mentioned the word prodigal. I mean, I would just think about that story of the prodigal son. I'm sure there were moments where the father in that story didn't know what to do and didn't feel like he could do anything but pray and wait on the Lord to work in the heart of his son. And so, I mean, I think part of our posture can be to pray and to wait for the Lord to work. It sounds really difficult. I think to prepare for that beforehand, to try to avoid that, is what we're saying. Like, how do we keep the faith? I think things we could do is, as parents, might be engaging with college students now before our students go off, and to help them see what it looks like for a college student to be loved by a different family other than their own, to get a picture of how the gospel can work in the lives of college students. If our kids can see that before they leave, I think that can help. I think ultimately, with tough questions like these, I think we have to rely on the Lord to work in their hearts, and that's can definitely stretch our faith, and can be sad when we're in those difficult spots with that.
Yeah, wow. Thanks for sharing. I'm in the same place. I have a 2-year-old daughter and an infant boy. I don't know, that personally. Yeah, for students, again, I would urge you, don't wrestle with these things in the dark. Oh, I was just introduced to Nietzsche. I'm really wrestling with what do I do with what he says versus what my parents told me my whole life. Talk to somebody, whoever that is in your life. If it's a campus minister, if it's a pastor, if it's a friend, you talk to somebody. Yeah, I guess to parents, I would say, yeah, man, I feel unequipped to say this really because I haven't experienced it, but the Lord keeps his people. The Lord keeps his people, even when maybe the pleasures of the world or the lies of the world may lead them away for a time. The Lord keeps his people. Incredibly, maybe, the study I mentioned from Lifeway in 2017, the only time that people said they went back to church is after they had kids. And they said, well, I want my kids to experience something I didn't have or that I had. There's this, people still want their kids to grow up. I don't know, like knowing what's right and wrong. I'm sorry, maybe that's not helpful. God keeps his people. I'm sorry. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I cannot imagine what that's like. So thank you for being willing to share that, and we'll continue to pray for our students and continue to trust that our God is faithful and that He loves His children. Other questions that we have? Okay. Something that has come up a little bit and would possibly be a benefit would maybe be for all of us to think and consider how we maybe balance our time, because I hear a lot of this coming maybe even down to a simple conversation of priorities. Maybe what am I prioritizing now that is going to be beneficial later? Whether or not we, even I try to welcome some of the students that I teach on Wednesdays and Sundays that don't worry about having the right answer all the time. Come asking the questions that you have without fear of being condemned for asking the question in the first place. And I think that speaks to a priority of wanting everyone to be welcomed into process and not be expected to earn their righteousness in some sense. What other priorities could we maybe think about, as maybe children are still in middle school or high school? Like, how can we start to build that framework for what we put in the bucket first?
I think before that can look different for everybody. So I think that's one where it's hard to maybe give a recipe for how to do that. But I think just thinking big picture, trying to understand what it means to be a person. As a college student, you're figuring out how to maybe in some ways take care of a lot of things. That you're a body and soul. You have relationships. You have finances. Like there's all sorts of things that maybe a lot of these things your parents were helping make sure you were at least on the right path with, and now you have to figure all that out on your own. And so sometimes things that should maybe be a better priority, eating healthy, getting enough sleep, all those types of things get left behind. And so a lot of this, if you're talking priorities, college students are going to make a lot of mistakes on priorities. And so it's a time to fail and figure out what to do and what not to do. And that's kind of goes back to what I was talking about at the beginning, is that college can be a wild ride, and it's up and down, and students are figuring that out. One thing that stood out to me from a class I took recently, my professor helped us understand that learning is failing forward. And so college students need to fail forward in a lot of these areas. And so, when it comes to setting priorities, we talk about making time for church, but there's so many things that college students can get involved in that most college students I know are overwhelmed and busy and stressed out. And so it's okay to not succeed in every single area is something I think college students need to hear. You don't have to perform to be accepted and loved. And so helping share that good news with college students before they go to college can be good too.
I think that's great.
Wonderful. One of our youth leaders, he wouldn't mind me sharing this, but he was really involved with RUF starts with a P. It's coming to me. Nope, it's gone. In Texas, Waco, in that school. Baylor, not with a P, with a B. I know. Well, it says dyslexia thing, it gets me every time. So there's one of those funny things you can joke about. But he said his minister did tell him one thing that, just a simple principle to maintain was the Sabbath, to take a day off. It doesn't matter which day, but you need to go and worship on the Lord's Day, but also pick a day that you can take a day off and take 1 and 7. And so just one of those many principles that comes to us from Scripture that has benefit for all of us as adults and as students. So I'm going to open up one more time for questions, and if nobody has anything. All right, well, thank you guys for coming. Quinn and David, thank you all for being here. I'm sure you're all ready to, I know we're not hangry yet, but it's coming, right? So we got to get going to the food. But thank you for coming. Students, I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday night or Sunday. Guys, thank you. If anybody has questions that they didn't feel like they wanted to ask or come back up, once we close, we'll be here. We got plenty of time. We are about God's people, so that's why we're here. So we pray for us, and we'll close. So, Jesus, thank you so much for this time. Thank you for these folks who are concerned about the future, who are looking forward. Lord, I ask that they would leave here encouraged, not at anything that we would have said, but only in the things that reflect your glory and your faithfulness to us, and how you love us, how you will be with us, you never leave us or forsake us. And that is true for us as adults and parents, as well as the students and our children. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you guys so much. Have a great week.